Welcome to Modern Mystic Messages. I'm Teresa. I do want to thank you for clicking on the video. If this is your first time here, thank you for stopping by. If you're returning, welcome back, soul family. This is definitely going to be different today. We don't have any cards. I'm not any of that. I am here. I want to give you a little wave to let you know I am in the house. But I am going to play for you a part of a phone call that I had today. The person that I'm on the phone with is well aware that I was recording. But in fact, she was the one that suggested it. I was talking to my girlfriend today, and we were on the phone for a long time. And it reached a point, you get the spirit chills, and the conversation starts going off into all these different things. And she was just letting me cook. She finds a lot of the little tidbits of information that I've collected over the years interesting. And she was like, girl, you really need to just start recording some of this stuff. So at one point, we started talking about something interesting, and I did turn it on. And from that point in the phone call on, just let it ride out. And so I wanted to share it with you. So without further ado, I apologize if the sound quality isn't quite up to par, but I'm having to do this a little bit old school today. So we're going to rock out with that. And I hope you enjoy it. Two primary reasons why cannabis has been legalized now. And at first, I was all for it because they've proven that, number one, our bodies do have cannabinoid receptors and to some degree terpene receptors as well. There's a lot of medicinal benefit in cannabis usage. They're discovering more and more all the time that the government use that as an excuse to do all this research. And, oh, that's so lovely. And they want to control it to make sure we're getting high quality products and da-da-da-da-da. And it sounds good. And they done made this whole plan of these dispensaries around the country. And that's a beautiful thing. I ain't knocking nobody. Go get your card. Do what you're going to do to a degree. But the further I looked into it and considered it, and you got to remember, I started using cannabis. I was so against it because I understood back in the day the way I was introduced to it, what the people, the energy of the people, and the way I was initially introduced to it was not good. And I had steered away from it for like 15, 20 years. When I started meditating, after about 3 months into my meditation journey, Spirit led me to use cannabis or try cannabis again. So I did. But because I was working off of what I was getting in meditation, it's almost like the energy of the plant itself connected with me and taught me how to properly use it. The vast majority of people use cannabis improperly, and they do not get the correct benefit from it. Used in very small amounts, it's a gateway to further thin the veil and can lead to beautiful spiritual connection and enlightenment. It genuinely helps launch you to another level in the etheric plane, if you will, for spiritual connection. But overused, and the vast majority, when I say used properly, I'm saying almost, now I won't call it microdosing, but considering how much people brag about rolling blunts, 2, 3, 4, 5 blunts a day, they are overusing and oversaturating cannabis so much in their systems that the very enlightenment that they think they're going to get for it genuinely closes the door to their ascension. And that's the real reason why cannabis is being spread so wide and far in America right now. They gave us the fluoride in the water to try to keep our pineal glands from activating, and it worked to a large extent. But some people got on hip to that and stopped using fluoride and started drinking fresh water and all that. They've been doing all kinds of things to try to stop the ascension and the evolution of humanity ever since they told us our DNA was junk. They knew damn well right then it wasn't junk DNA. We have what's called a diamond core God cell. in us. They don't know where it came from. They don't this, that. Because some of the things that they found in our DNA don't really jive with a completely organic God story that, as such as they've tried to tell us through Christianity. They know that we have evidence of genetic engineering or modification that shows up in our DNA, in our alleles or what have you. What in the world? But yeah, that was it. Like I say, I was a pro cannabis advocate for a long time, but I saw that the overusage of it, and I still stand on 100%. Children should not be smoking it. Period. Whether we got cannabinoid receptors or not, unless that child is battling cancer or some other disease for which the cannabinoid profile is more appropriate than the stunt or the potential inhibition of the brain cell development, nobody under the age of 18 should be smoking or drinking or any other ways using cannabis. In my opinion, if a person is going to use it, I believe it should be used as either a spiritual tool, and I want to say or intimacy enhancer, if you will, with a spiritual bent. And by that I mean anybody that uses it does know that it does increase that. But again, these are things that have to be or should be done in cooperation with someone who is equally focused, aware, and spiritually matched with you energy wise. It is not to be out there with Lolita the hooker down the road, or to pick up booty call, a Netflix and chill gal, a random party pickup, or any of that stuff. That's when it starts becoming dangerous. When these people are out here rolling blunts 2, 3, 4, 5 a day, truthfully, anything initially more than like about the size of a regular, what they call a joint or a pin joint, is going to take you past the spiritual benefit of it into the overkill that's going to mess you up. I got a friend right now, I told you, the friend that I was talking to smokes, he's kind of a lonely stoner. Super spiritual dude. One of the most creative people I've ever seen. Probably will have a lot of the other clairs and stuff open up too. He's already channeling to a degree, but he smokes a lot because he done got so spiritual that when he stops smoking, his body is trying to complete his ascension. He's probably damn near at the Christic level and don't even know it, because when he doesn't smoke a lot of weed, his energy is trying to ramp up even higher, and he's scared because he doesn't want to open his clairaudience and his clairvoyance. Then you shouldn't have walked down the spiritual path. But keeping yourself inhibited by over smoking weed isn't going to help you, because at that point, if you stay too high for too long, you start drawing negative entities unto yourself. That's why a lot of those people that do that start dealing with depression and paranoia and those kinds of things over much. It's not street weed, certain strains can spark up paranoia and all overly. They really can. Cannabis can do that. It's a two-edged sword. If you overuse it, it will cause, or when you first start using it, it'll cause paranoia in certain strains. And if you overuse it, you can as well. But when I started working with it, it basically taught me that I would have to I kept my usage really, really low. I used it in cooperation with meditation. And I made sure that I was using, like I said, not only was I not using it that often during the day, I wasn't smoking all day long, but when I smoke, I keep the amount low. When my tolerance starts ramping up, then I go off of it for a while to allow my tolerance to lower again. And I know through the years you've heard me do that. It's like, oh, I'm not gonna smoke for a couple of weeks, so I'll go off it for a month or two, so that when I go back, I don't ever want to be to a point where I have to smoke a whole bowl for me to get the benefit of it. Truthfully, a bowl is my limit for the day, and it ain't a big bowl. It's the regular old go to the corner store starter one pipe, if you will. Yeah, I now, even after 7 years of consistent smoking, I've kept my tolerance to where that lower amount is still beneficial, and I'm happy that I was able to do that, because at that point, spirit can kind of tell you when you need to just put it aside, when the spiritual benefit that you're receiving isn't worth what's happening to your body. It's like, okay, Chica, you done took it a little too far now. Now, the other part that I do want to mention on that, I was shown in meditation that the primary exception to that is with the Rastafarians. A true Rastafari connects differently. Their cannabinoid profile in their system is different than the rest of us, because it is said that they descend from the tribe of Levi, the priesthood. For real, the priests. And over time, they've kept themselves separate from most of the world, pretty much, which means they've kept their gene pool separate from the world, pretty much. And remember, we were talking earlier about what happens when you sequester a gene pool. Certain things are a little bit different. They don't process cannabis the way we do. It truly is a more spiritual connection for them. And they interact with the plant differently, but they're also aware and making a conscious decision to interact with the plant and the spirit of the plant as well. So, yeah, they smoke mad amounts of it, and it's different for them. It really, really is. Could I say for all of the Whizzes and Puff, Snoop, and all of them that have made a career? Honestly, I think at this point they done smoked that much for so long till they do it so that they can feel anything. Because when your tolerance gets up super high, you don't get high no more. That's why they keep ramping it up and up and up. Spiritually, do I think they benefit from clearing their system and allowing their tolerance to get low again? Probably. Some of them probably abused it for so long, or used it for so long. Till if they did do that, who knows where that. Well, I remember that time. Remember when Snoop stopped smoking for a while, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, please smoke again." Oh, excuse me, I'm about to choke over here. I was in Virginia. Wasn't that like 20? I want to say somewhere around 2010, 2011, somewhere like that. Anywho, but yeah, I can't judge them, but the only thing that I get is when the average person on the street think that they gonna smoke like that and it's gonna be cool. No. Because first off, that's a whole different level. Those people have money on a different level. They smoke like that for so long that they're connected with the plant in a different way. The average person on the street really, really shouldn't do that. I couldn't recommend it. And anybody that's trying to spiritually ascend, absolutely not. Absolutely not. If they're not Rastafarian from birth, I ain't talking about just went and picked up the religion, because now that's a thing that we can do. Now I'm talking about genetically coming from that culture. Yeah, they don't need to be out there rolling up the way they are. Sure, we used to do that. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Well, I guess I can see if I can edit that out if I do decide to publish this. But no, oh boy, that was part of the issue. I didn't know when we were dating. I never knew he smoked at all. I didn't find out till after the fact when he rolled back into my life, and I had no idea. Even once I found out he did smoke, I had no idea the amount he was smoking, and I know for sure that it clouded his spiritual lens. He was so spiritually arrogant while being yet so spiritually ignorant without having a clue. He swore up and down, and that was part of my issue, kept me in doubt of my clairaudience, had me doubting myself as my spiritual gift. Now, in later years, right before I realized who and what he was and gave him the boot, he had seen my spiritual potential for what was getting ready to happen and started telling me and putting me in on that. But 10, 15 years ago, when I was beginning to hear things, he was very much lording it over me about, wow, just wait till you get to this point. You'll understand one day. Kind of like, just chill, grasshopper. Not saying it that, but it kind of in that tone, very condescending about where I was at in my walk. Little did I know the whole time he was lying by omission out there doing all kinds of things. Instead, he was using it even heavily even then. But he's used it so heavily for so long, his spiritual lens is very, very cloudy and distorted, like significantly distorted. I was sitting there one night trying to give him a clairaudient message from his uncle who had just passed about 6 months prior, some stuff that really could have helped him out. And he just could not hear what I had to say. And it was buzzing so loud in my ear, I got so frustrated with him, I almost ended the phone call because I'm like, no, dude, you don't understand. I'm receiving a download right now. I know good and full well this is your uncle. I didn't know him, but he's telling me the da-da-da-da-da. And he's steadily trying to tell me what Spirit told him and went and did the exact opposite of what I said. And it cost him. But like I told you earlier, he ignored me 15 years ago, and it cost him dearly that time. This last time, it only cost him $5,000. The last time he ignored my messages, it cost him over $200 million. And he still swear he's more spiritual and he can hear and all the rest of that while he's steadily rolling up, smoking 2, 3, 4 blunts a day. But yet the medicine that he's smoking hasn't helped his spirituality. It hasn't helped him medically wise because he's smoking too much. Actually, well, yeah, probably. I was about to say, truthfully, the amount of I don't want to say this part, kind of, sort of, but I'm going to have to say it because of what's coming through the message. That's a two-edged sword. Probably the only thing that has saved his vision at all is the fact that he smokes. So that part isn't bad, but he does overuse it. So yeah, I honestly think that he probably would have had better results if he would scale back on that some. But it did help him get off the anti-seizure medication, and it did keep him from losing his vision totally. But truthfully, at the end of the day, I can't say that the cannabis has either helped or swayed that completely, because part of that, what happened to him, I honestly don't believe, was a karmic lesson. His disobedience and the way his spiritual arrogance, I believe, has stood in the way of his physical healing the way it could have. And that is the karmic lesson. Cannabis can't fix it if his karma won't allow it to be fixed. I'm not trying to brag. I don't, any of that. But when the energy first ramped up in my body years ago, I was seeing him then. And even then, I could take like headaches and stuff away from people. It used to zonk me a lot because I didn't understand. I needed to cleanse my system, and I really needed some Reiki attunement and things like that. But I understood even then, 15 years ago, that I am a hands-on healer. And even a few years before I cut him off, a couple years ago, I was making arrangements to try to come up there to visit him. Spirit had kind of shown me or given me an idea of a way that I could kind of, basically, I was going to harness or use the power of group intention to have a few healing sessions with him using his children and the energy of that. And hopefully, like I said, I was trying to call, and again, the way things played out, I understand now. Spirit said no, but what had come to me was I wanted to do some angelic healing with him to work on his eyes and all that other good stuff, but he just couldn't keep his mouth and whatever together. And Spirit finally came out. The ancestor said no. I don't know whether Raphael would have allowed me to do that or not, but the ancestor said no. I was to leave him alone because I had no idea I was under spiritual attack or the reasons for it. And I'm not going to elaborate in this call on that sort of thing, but the initial illness was, in my opinion, an accident because I genuinely, unless the timeline is wrong, the initial thing that happened to him, I believe, happened before he did some of the dirt that I still ain't gonna discuss on here either. But part of his continued scenario is a karmic lesson. It really, really is. And and the crazy part is, it's a karmic lesson to a degree of his own choosing because of what he refuses to actually see. And because he carries a lot of guilt for some of the things that he's done. Now, he forgives himself to a degree on it, but I know he carries some sort of guilt about some of the things that he's done because the fact that he's still discussing them 2 decades after he did them, things that I would never have known if he hadn't told me, lets me know that he carries guilt, that he probably is not able to allow the level of healing that might be available to him if he wasn't still wrapped up in that kind of stuff. The things that we go through, but again, and I'm not even saying that to judge, just trying to understand, because why are my knees still hurting? If I'm a healer, why my knees still hurt? You know what I'm saying? We all have metaphysical and karmic lessons that we have to work our way through in order to get to the healing that we like or need or feel like we want to have. And sometimes we've done so much damage to this avatar that it's just something that we walk with. Whether we contracted for that before we got here or not, every ailment may not be taken from us. Some of the folks in the Bible had to go that route with a limp or a lisp or whatever they had to walk with. They just had to walk with them. We can damage these avatars. There's no guarantee that we're going to be taken to the med beds or given angelic healing or whatever else. After all, we did come here to experience a full range of emotions, and if that means understanding how to work within human limitations when we get in this skin suit, some of us have decided on this trip around we're going to do that. We're going to have vision problems or we're going to have muscular problems. Remember, several years ago, when I was trying to understand how law of attraction works, one of the things that came to me that helped me kind of understand and be cool with all of this was when I came to understand how and why good things happen to bad people or why babies are born with illnesses and stuff, because that's the main thing that wants to stop people from believing in God and from believing in whatever they like. Well, if that's the case, truthfully, that's true, because we're told that we're dirty and worthless and sinful, and that's why we need the blood of Jesus and all of that good stuff. That's what they tell us. And you think, well, what sin did a baby commit? How in the world could a baby have sinned? But what if what they say about us going through cycles is true, and that energy isn't truly destroyed, it's only transmitted, and that when we die, we don't really die, as countless buku people and said when they have near-death experiences, they talk about going to the light and the other side, but the whole really hellfire, brimstone, diehard Christian religious folk want to hold to the fact that they have all the answers, and they know that can't be true. But what if the Hindus and all of them years ago, like I said, that understood reincarnation, what if they was telling the truth? And what if we as spiritual beings kind of sort of were able to pick our course load, if you will, when we get ready to go into Earth school? What if Earth right here, this experience, is spiritual beings taking their turns at having the physical experience of being able to be tactily encapsulated in an avatar so that they can go through all of these soul growth lessons and be able to feel and smell and taste and articulate in ways that they cannot do when they are not physically embodied. And Earth is an actual school, and before we get here, we kind of get to sort of set the trajectory for the region we're going to be born in and who we're going to be born to. The blanks come up, and then we decide as a soul where we're going to be encapsulated, per se, and sort of kind of the rough outline for some of the major events that will come in our life to serve as not necessarily roadblocks, but perhaps lessons that we needed to learn or work on from previous lives, whether it's cycles of codependency or cycles of misplaced misogyny or toxic masculinity or poverty and dealing with money, blah, blah, blah. There's several real core programs that we're seeing played over and over right here as a collective in the Matrix. What if we choose those quote unquote courses before we ever get here? And then, of course, we agree part of the game is your memory gets wiped. You don't remember that you did that. But when I was trying to understand this thing about why babies get sick and all that, one of my toxic friends actually helped me understand that. The one that was up in Carolina for the longest, and I had to cut him off. And the reason it clicked for me one night, we had a conversation about the fact that, yeah, at the time I was smoking cigarettes and I smoked a little cannabis or what have you, but I was like, I stopped drinking alcohol. But I was saying the main reason that I never messed with any other drugs was because of Len Bias. I don't know if you remember that name, but Len Bias was a young college level athlete back in the, 1911, whenever. I can't remember. I'm not trying to disrespect the man, but I was literally a teenager. And he was supposed to be the latest, greatest, everything. I wasn't even enough in sports to know whether he was a basketball player or a football player, but he was supposed to be a big deal, enough so that he was beginning to become a household name. And I had heard his name and seen it in the papers and stuff, even though I'm not a sports fan. And before he could sign professionally, he went to some party and did coke. I'm assuming one line, two line. I have no idea. But whatever he did, it was too pure. And that boy's heart exploded on the spot and killed him. That story was shocking enough, of course, that saddened the world. But it created a lifelong impression on me. And other than that time that I said my dumb behind played Columbo and touched my finger to that residue in the baggie that my toxic, crazy behind boyfriend, soon to be ex, had brought into my house, I never touched cocaine another day in life past that experience. And when I just touched that residue and it made my head start buzzing, I told him to get his junk and get out my house. I won't deal with somebody that's on that stuff because I believe what they show me in the movies. I understand that. But when my other friend, when I was having that conversation with him about why he didn't do drugs either, the Lynn Bias story was the thing that was a deciding factor in his life as well. Now, he still smoked, and he smoked a little cannabis, and he drank considerably more than, but he never would fool with hard drugs because of hearing that story. And in that moment, it was like a light bulb went off in my head, and I'm thinking, what if somebody's sitting up there, sitting around in the ethers or wherever, let's say heaven, because that's how it looks we're taught to see it that way. You're sitting up before you get ready to incarnate in this earth, and you're quote unquote up there in heaven trying to decide your courses for earth school. And you understand, you look down on the earth and you're like, you know what, whatever's going on down there, this whole cancer situation is just getting out of hand. This whole Parkinson's situation is just getting out of hand. This whole diabetes research situation with humanity is just hurting humanity. Whatever the things are that a lot of babies come here with. How about I'm going to go down here and I'm going to be born. I'm going to choose to be born with this disease. It's going to be a short life. It's going to be a little uncomfortable. But you know what? The research that's going to come out of what the doctors learn by trying to treat me is going to move humanity forward leap years. It's worth it to me, y'all. Hold my beer. I'll be right back. If you're an eternal being and you know you're going to be right back, we sign up for all kinds of shit. We sign up for all kinds of ish that we normally wouldn't want to go through. People want to. And the next time I saw and understood that, oddly enough, that same dude that I was talking about that was so that I had issues with on a personal level, one day I had the opportunity to connect with his higher self, his higher being. And I was asking this very specifically that question. Wait a minute. Why would you choose to come here and be legally blind and have all these difficulties and have gone through the this and the that and getting hit by the car and all the rough stuff that you go, why would you sign up for that? And he told me straight up. Now, the human in the skin suit didn't say this to me, but his spirit told me because it was on the curriculum. If you're an old soul and you done did this a bajillion times, you will sign up for some uncomfortable stuff because you done been the king and the prince and the rich kid enough times. You've even tried your hand at the pauper and the bad guy and the whatever a few times. So you've been here and hardy and sales, able-bodied and all of that a few times. If you stick around and keep coming back here long enough, eventually you will choose one of these trips through that comes with some physical difficulty because you want to have that full range of experience. You're an eternal being. And if you've never experienced that, sooner or later you're going to be curious. And it seems like a long time to limp through a life with those differently abled scenarios as far as we're concerned here, because we don't have memory of it. But if you're an eternal being, you know you are, what is 80 years or 100 years or even 200 years? If your soul has been at this for thousands of years, 80 years is just a blip. Hold my beer, I'll be right back. Especially if my temporary discomfort is going to allow for information technology or advancement that is going to benefit humanity overall for generations to come by way of butterfly effect. Because we are in a 3D, and we're in a quantum matrix. What we do, say, whatever, all of those energies and vibrations that we make ripple out in that butterfly effect and play across timelines. So anything that we accomplish on a positive note in this lifetime is going to affect generations forward and backward in a positive way for several generations overall. And through butterfly effect, it affects humanity. overall. Just like the negative crap that people choose to do has a negative ripple effect that expands out through all times and dimensions negatively as well. But ultimately, that's how and why light wins, because light is more powerful than the dark. One who is connected to source is more powerful than millions who are not. Abraham Hicks said it, and I believe it to be true. So ultimately, no matter how bad these bad actors act, and we see them on the TV acting super bad every day, and I ain't talking about on the movies and the entertainment, I'm talking about on the news. It's crumbling right now. All of their filth is being uncovered. But Gil Scott Heron said the revolution will not be televised. And by that, he meant it comes from within. And truthfully, in the waking up of folks during the age of Aquarius, them doing that spirit work and this and that and the manifestational stuff that everybody says is woo woo and poo poo and all of that, through sheer vibration, intention, and vibrational manifestation, the ripple effect, the butterfly effect of the work that the chosen ones are doing now is helping light win, whether they see it or not. It genuinely is planting trees under the shade of which we know we may or may not ever sit. And that's why I just continue people to keep doing what you're doing, because you, hey, like I say, even if we don't truly see the full segue into the full-blown, peaceful, golden age of Aquarius that prophecy has promised, we're standing on the doorway of it. We know it's coming. We can't possibly not know that it's right here. Yeshua said he would not leave us as orphans, that he would come back. And I saw 4 or 5 years ago that he was coming back, not necessarily in the physical, but that he was going to be bringing all his galactic and cosmic friends with him. And after that, everybody and his third cousin is channeling the ascended masters. They're channeling the archangels. This information is coming in, and religion is steadily trying to shut them down, but they can't. The revolution will not be televised, but it's happening. And light is winning and will win, and the darkness knows it, and they are furious, but ain't nothing they can do about it. And that's why I love standing on the side that I'm on. Yeah, I have my little self-doubts, and I'd be upset because I'm still too plugged into this avatar and still remember too much of the programming to be worried about who may or may not like what I have to say. But the only ones that ain't gonna like what I gotta say is the people that are still steeped in the lies. So if they're not ready to hear me, fine, as long as they don't stop me from helping those who are ready to hear it. Because I'm not even worried about the old heads who's mad and want to call me a hypocrite or a heretic or whatever it is that they choose to call me. I'm worried about their children and grandchildren who need somebody to stop pumping these lies into the next generations so that we can do something to dig humanity out of this mess before that knowing moment that I mentioned earlier, because that cataclysm is coming. They knew that at the end of the flood, they knew another cataclysm like that would come. That's why they give you that lie or that promise of the rainbow, that God said he'll never destroy the earth by flood again. And then they instill fear in people and claim in Revelation it's going to be by fire. But the truth of the matter is, it wasn't Yahweh that promised he would never destroy the earth again. And then Harsag, Isis, Ishtar felt bad about what Yahweh had done and said she will not allow that to happen again. Yahweh is the one that caused the same damn flood he claimed he wasn't going to ever do again. Like I said, he do all of this hateful, nasty stuff. He throw a rock and hide his hand and then take credit for the salvation from the very thing that he initially caused. He threw Adam and Eve out the garden and then blamed his brother and called his brother a Satan and a devil for telling the truth, because Look at what you made me do. You told them the truth, so now I have to throw them out in the garden, out of the Garden of Eden to their death. Ain't that some narcissistic nonsense? Yes, that is. Yeah, look what you made me do. And for that, Enki has been painted as Satan and a devil the entire time. But the for real devil in the Garden of Eden was Enlil. But he got people both worshiping him and fearing him on both sides of the coin on some narcissistic nonsense, keeping people blind. Everything that he's done to try to keep humanity his foot on humanity's neck, because he done already said, let him die, he don't care. And everything Enki was doing to try to help humanity and save us, Enlil would turn around and kick it over. And if we survived anyway, he'd turn around and take credit for saving us, even though he wasn't. Ishtar said that she felt sorrow for what had been done and would never allow humanity to allow this flood, the earth, to be completely destroyed by water ever again. And the rainbow was given as the symbol. But like I said, Revelation says it's going to be by fire. Truthfully, if left to our own devices, it would be nuclear attack, because the people that gave nuclear technology to the planet understood that they were not supposed to give humanity that kind of information before we were spiritually ready to receive it. And the greedy bastards that put it into technology, all of the governments around the world that were using that stuff, don't have a clue. They're like children playing with firearms. They have no clue what they're dealing with, but their greed and their hunger and their power to rule over each other and the people that they're supposed to be serving have put them in a position that if left to their own devices, they really would blow this planet up. They really would if they were left to their own devices. And the Father, Sky Daddy, that's supposed to stop all this from happening, who doesn't give a rappy about humanity, is going to let his child play with a loaded gun or stick his finger in a light socket because he doesn't care. Uncle or other Sky Daddy, whatever you want to call it, is doing his level best to wake people up and teach them the truth. And every turn in their hard-hearted ignorance, they've been turning their nose up at the information that could actually help save humanity, because they just don't want to believe it's real, because between religiosity and political stranglehold from greedy, selfish humans who serve a greedy, selfish God, they're leading mankind right off the rails. And it has to stop. Child, that's a long far cry from where we got. We started out with why it's good or not good to smoke cannabis. But truthfully, in a way, you can't completely dissociate the two. When I first started smoking, like I said, I was led to smoking in meditation, but I used to call it chilling in the God problem. In fact, of the matter, I probably I done said it on this recording. Now, if I publish this recording, I hope don't nobody take the title. But for 6 years, I've known that that's the title of the book I'm gonna write. Truthfully, I'm date stamping this now. This is December 25th, 2024. So let this serve as a copyright notice or proprietary, whatever, da-da-da-da-da-da. As long as I can keep this recording intact, that book that I'm supposed to write, one of the books the Spirit said they're going to help me write is called Chilling in the God Problem. Because you can't look at, well, I don't know what other people saw. When I first started working with cannabis, it took me on cosmic concepts. I started thinking about that question. Like I said, people always want to know, well, who is God? Who created God? Getting all the way back to the initial one, to source. And I never could see that one, because obviously that initial one would be an intelligence or a thought that was never embodied. Our minds, our physical human minds, with the break in the programming, are not designed to understand the magnitude and the complexity of what is our universe or universal consciousness. We can't understand tracing a concept back to something that has no beginning. But the beginning is so far back there that it is irrelevant at this point. And that's the part people don't understand, because, like simple-minded children, they want to stamp their foot and get stuck on that one point. That's beside the point. Because the ones that we call God, and that's the crazy part, they think they got all the answers because they want so bad for Jehovah to be the ultimate creator of the heavens and the earth. And they don't understand that Enlil and Enki knew damn well that they were not gods, and they don't even understand who the beginning of the divine is, but they do respect that there is a divine creator outside of them. He is, or it is, she is, he, she is, whatever, the divine. They understand that the planet that they came here to, called Ea, that was scarred with veins of gold from the explosion of Tiamat, they know that this planet was not put here by them, that it was made by somebody else, and that the initial terraforming and the preliminary bioforming of it was done by the divine creator, not them. The people that we call gods on this planet today, every single one of them, whether it's Allah, Yahweh, Enki, Ishtar, Ra, Poseidon, Ptah, Odin, Buddha, Krishna, all of them were extraplanetary beings who came here to bioform the planet that had already been terraformed by the true God. We're not supposed to be worshiping none of them. We're supposed to respect all of them and work with some of them, but we're not supposed to worship any of them. But the only way we can truly be identified and saved is if we prove ourselves intelligent enough and of enough Anunnaki blood to turn off our worship gene. And that's where the people get stuck, because they're so in fear of displeasing Sky Daddy that they can't even hear what I got to say and make that choice. Or they get so angry and bitter that they become hardcore atheists that don't want to look any further and decide nothing put us here and there's nothing that we need to know and it's just all stupid, and they want to just get caught up in mathematical equations. And they don't understand it's not that simple. In order to really advance humanity the way we need to, we do have to turn off the worship gene, but we do have to realize that these people were real beings. So if they weren't gods, who were they, and how can we work with them? That part. Because it is possible to work with them. They ain't really going nowhere, not for real. I'm not sure whether Enlil, Yahweh, his influence is still here. I don't know if he's still physically embodied here in the tombs or under the ground. Probably not. I don't know. Who cares at this point? But even if they're not physically embodied here, that's the other thing as far as the Bible and the timeline, what people don't understand. We mentioned earlier, chapter 1 of Genesis happened hundreds of thousands of years ago. Chapter 2 in Genesis happened roughly 6,000 years ago, 6,500 years ago or so. From chapter 2 in Genesis up to roughly in the Proverbs or so, that was a span of maybe about 3,000 years. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John happened 2,000 years ago. But here's the thing. In Anunnaki lifespan, all of the stuff that happened in the Bible from chapter 2 on up happened within the past 2 of their Anunnaki years, within 2 years. So whoever was living to pretend to be God or put themselves or portray themselves as God or to tell any of these stories as God. We look at it as ancient history. It's something that happened less than 2 of their years ago. All of those beings are still alive. And whether they're physically embodied on the planet or not, they're watching us. They done told us about the watchers. It's like they're looking at us in a fishbowl or an ant farm to see what the fuck we're going to do. Oh, excuse me. I hope I don't get a strike or whatever if I decide to put this out there. But no, they're literally looking to see what we're going to do. Will we continue to rock on with this nonsense that Enlil done told us? Or will we wake up and let our consciousness ascend? Enki told us the truth. We are not gods and we will not die if we don't follow Enlil. He's trying to show us a better way to get along, a way that does not require us killing and murdering our brothers, a way that does not allow for us to continue to be abusive to our women, a way that doesn't have to have us being so greedy and grasping into commerce that there is poverty on the planet and people starving to death. That is not something that should happen, nor does it have to happen. You know as well as I do, if just the billionaires on this planet got together and gave up a tiny portion of their collective wealth, no one on this planet will go to bed hungry. And yet, hundreds of thousands of people on this planet go to bed hungry every day. Some of them so much so that they will not wake in the morning due to the effects of starvation. How any billionaire or trillionaire on this planet could sleep at night knowing that there are literally people on this planet that will not wake up in the morning because they didn't have enough food? Even though edible vegetation grows for free 99 out of the ground on every sector of everywhere on this planet. But the places that have the most starvation, the governments literally control the land to keep the people from growing it for free. And companies turn around and copyright the seed codes so that we can't grow food for free and they can sleep at night. And they don't understand that if you allow yourself to become that monstrous, you don't deserve to be here anymore. Now, I'm not threatening any of those people because I ain't nobody and can't do nothing. But the same people that allowed all of those greedy people to get so big for their britches that they think they're justified in doing that stuff to people, he's the one that really, really don't care about humanity much at all. They're eventually going to lead themselves to the wall and they're going to slide down and crack like an egg. Their time on this, for that reign of terror, will be ending. The difference is how many people will choose to come out of that way of thinking and be like those ones before the throne that it talks about in Revelation 20 and 21 and 22 and all of them, that choose to step out of that and survive that mess, because all of that kind of stuff is coming to an end. It's in Revelation. I'm gonna talk about it on the channel. All the immorality and the greed and the war and the pestilence and all of that stuff that people want to sit there and look as if it's something coming later. No, it's not. We've been in it for a minute. We're living through the Great Tribulation right now. It's going to get worse in some places, but honestly, how much worse do they expect that it's going to get? Folks in America already got a huge contingent of homeless people laying out in the streets. The only thing that's left for us here is active war and martial law in the streets, and we can be no different than 2 or 3 other well-known hotspots around the globe whose citizens are going through the same nonsense. It's beginning.
We are already heading towards war.
That's what I'm saying. It's about to melt down right now. So humanity is at a point globally they can continue to feed into that, or they can understand that their real salvation, if you will, is unplugging themselves mentally from that. Because guess what? Even if you still got to go to work every day and pay your taxes and do all those things that you got to do, nobody can control your mind. And the key to freedom, according to Enki, is to first and foremost turn off your worship gene. And right now, the ascended masters and the angels and all the rest of that contingent that does actually care about us and has been trying to reach out for us to tag them in for hundreds and thousands of years, they're still here too. Enki ain't Enlil ain't the only one that's still here with his minions and his people that's been effing up the planet for the longest. The other folks that, like I said, the A team is here too, but we have to acknowledge them and tap them in. But once we do that, we're down to the wire where the battle is not going to be fought on a physical field. People are looking for Armageddon to be an atomic nuclear war that happens. I honestly don't believe that the galactic help that we have is going to allow for the detonation of major wide-scale nuclear warheads. I've had connection, but not on ship. I have never been on craft as far as I can remember or know, unless it happened astrally. But I became aware of Commander Ashtar Sheeran. I mean, there Commander Ashtars, there's several different commanders of the Ashtar fleet. I'm familiar with Sheeran, but truthfully, I don't think that they're going to allow the detonation of wide-scale nuclear warheads on this planet again. I mean, it wasn't ever done wide scale. They've tested a couple places, and again, for the people that suffered through that, I'm not trying to take any light or, I'm not taking it disrespectfully. That was horrific. Shame on the people that thought that that was a cool thing to do. What the F? However, instead of them saying, whoa, we went too far, this is bad, what did they do? They spent billions and trillions of taxpayers' dollars all around the globe to set up more of those, to have the potential. Every major Western country on this planet, unless they have dismantled them all, and I'm pretty sure they have, and they don't usually backpedal off of much here. At one point in time, every major country in this planet had enough nuclear warheads to destroy every man, woman, child, blade of grass, and cockroach on this planet 6 times over. And that was when I was a kid. Can you imagine how much more they stockpile now? And for freaking what? They have literally turned the world and this whole globe into a grenade. Wait for one major F up to go up in smoke. So I don't think the A team, as I referred to them, is going to allow the detonation of that kind of stuff. I believe all of that stuff will be dismantled and safely destroyed at some point in the near future because it needs to be. Giving humanity nuclear weapons was genuinely like allowing a toddler to play with a loaded 357 with no safety on it. And they'll throw us under the jail for doing that. But they keep nuclear technology alive on the planet. But again, the ones that gave humanity the ability to figure that out now, Einstein, bless his sweet little heart, he cried when he found out what they were going to do with his theories. Because it was his math that allowed them to finish whatever the piece was. Hey, good afternoon. I'm so sorry. Yeah. It was his math that allowed them to figure out how to do that. And he had no intention of allowing that kind of misuse of that information. That was not intended. And he was very upset by it. But same thing, look at Tesla's work. They misused, they took a lot of different things. They played with a lot of stuff in a lot of ways that shouldn't have been. And all of the timeline jumping and the looking here, over there, and the remote viewing experiences and all that stuff that they swore up and down was conspiracy theory and all of that. They called all of that stuff conspiracy theory That's another form of throwing a rock and hiding their hand. Call the people that's calling you out on it crazy. Gaslight the world into believing that all of those people are crazy. Meanwhile, you steadily doing all of this stuff right there in plain sight in their faces. But because you call it theory, the sheep will go right back to sleep and choose not to believe and sit there and laugh and scorn the people that are trying to warn them about it and call them crazy. But we're coming to a point in time that all of that's going to have to stop, because if somebody doesn't hear and believe, and I ain't going to say nobody's going to survive, because guess what? Just like in that movie Knowing, they took up a small contingent when the thing happened to Earth that happened, the chosen ones. If the Bible then already told us there will be a surviving contingent. Now, in Revelation, it doesn't show them being taken up. It shows a city coming down. So whatever happens by way of the next cataclysm, I don't know whether we will have to be taken up. But in Christianity, don't they teach about the rapture? And I kind of sort of think that might be a culling out or a saving of, if there is a rapture to happen, it will be because they know that this next disaster, this next earth-wide cataclysm is going to happen. They knew it was coming. Like I said, when the flood ended, they knew that it was going to be coming. It said in the Lost Book, it said before the next Shar. So in one Nibiru year, they knew, or in less than 1 year, they knew that another cataclysm was coming, and this one won't be caused by Enlil like the flood was. It's something that's happening with the planetary something, or the asteroid belt, or the something that I'm pretty sure our astronomers have already seen and ain't telling us about. But however it goes down, way back then, 3,000 years ago, they knew that before the next 3,500 years have passed, there will be another cataclysm that seriously impacts Earth and has the potential to wipe out humanity. And because of that, the A-Team, Enki and his crew have said they will save a contingent of humanity. Revelation 21 describes God, and again, there was 2 gods in chapter 2. By the time we get down to Revelation 21 and 22, there's 2 gods back in the Bible. There's several times in the Bible where God is mentioned in the generic God, the Lord, and the Lord God. Those are not one singular person. Enlil wanted Jehovah wanted people to think there's only one God. But if there was only one God, why would he have to tell them that he's a jealous God and you'll have no other gods before me? That was the whole thing that got the nation of Israel messed up. Because they was out there building that golden calf. They was getting ready to worship Moloch after he got them out of Egypt. And he got mad about that and led them 40 years through the desert, lost until half of the people he had made that promise to died out there in the desert. And then the rest of them and their children and all of that, he delivered them to the land of Canaan and said, you want a promised land? There it is. Go get it. You can fight the giants. You can do whatever. If you can win it, you can have it. And they've been fighting out there over there ever since in the Sinai Peninsula. Ever since. They still fighting today. If you don't believe me, go turn on TV. Over land that don't belong to them, because he told them, you're stiff-necked people and I wash my hands of you. But they still believe that they're the chosen ones. And that's fine. But chosen by who and for what? You chose to serve Yahweh, who is the one who literally put y'all in that bind, lied to you, has never fulfilled his promises to not one character in the Bible, in the Torah, in the Pentateuch, in the anything. He has never fulfilled any of his promises to any of the people who chose to serve him. Abraham said, choose this day whom you will serve. As for me and my household, we will serve Yahweh. And they've been going to hell in a handbasket ever since. Joshua and Caleb said, it's giants in the land. Yahweh said, if you want it, there's the land, go get it. He didn't prepare a place for them. He promised them the ability to go do a home invasion on a land that was already occupied by giants. The Agigi, the Nephilim were in that land. and he sent those people in there potentially to their deaths. That's the God that they chose to serve, and still choosing to serve, and wonder why we have so much hell and confusion on this planet. And Enki said, you can choose not to serve him. You're not going to die. He's not a God. You're made in his image. We came here and genetically formed you with our DNA melded with the hominid that was on this planet. You're not a God, and neither is he. But we can work on this. That's what got Enki painted as a devil and a Satan, for telling the truth. So would that not make the real liar and manslayer? It's not Enki, it's Enlil. Jehovah and the devil is the same person, and got the whole world lying in the power of the wicked one. He told him that right there in the scriptures. Because his greatest tool is his anonymity. And he has been bending them over with no grease ever since, all the way from chapter 2 in the book, all the way out to the end. We're back here. We're right back around chapter. We're somewhere in the time frame. If Yeshua's dream to his cousin John is to be believed, we're living somewhere around Revelation 17, 18, 19 right now. 20 is coming on up. And we're going to discuss it. I'm going to get into them on the channel, because people really got to understand what we're up against and make a choice. And I know I've been wrestling with the idea of being unpopular, because they're going to talk about how disrespectful and how heretical I'm being. Just like they did with Yeshua, because that's what the heck they killed him for. Yeshua was a spiritual badass. He wasn't trying to point nobody to Christianity. He wasn't even trying to point them to Judaism. He told them, pick up your cot and follow me. He was trying to lead God's people away from that nonsense, away from Enlil worship, to save humanity. And they killed him for it. And everybody that's tried to truly walk in his footsteps since, they've killed him for it. It's just time.
Can we truly be saved?
Yeah. If we listen, like I said, it's not that hard. It's not a long process. It's basically deciding to, and I don't want to say it's not a long process, because look how long it took me to fully first connect the dots, find my way out of the religion thing, understand enough of world history to kind of see a pattern, delve into that a little bit, come back out and understand. But that's why I had said earlier, I'm uniquely suited for the job that I've been given, because if I hadn't learned to read so young and learned to read from the Bible and had read the Bible several times and be old enough and to have a childlike enough mind when I was brought into religion to ask real questions, a lot of grown folk, they just read enough to get through the Sunday sermon, and they're not asking those really, really critically thinking questions. For example, in Isaiah, when it talks about the wheel within the wheel and all the rest of that, I ask, y'all talking about you describing an angel? That sounds like a vehicle. Why does God need a car? You just described a spaceship. That don't sound right to me. Why is it that you're saying God is love, and that thou shalt not kill, and that a slave of the Lord does not need to fight? But half of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Bible, talk about the rape and plunder and the wars that they had to fight and laying out the nation of Israel. They out there on the murder, death, kill, and enslaving people and all that. I'm like, how in the world can the same book that gives instructions for the slave give instructions for the slave master give instructions for the slave? Both this and that cannot be true in this case. That I always ask that. I've asked questions that I had preachers calling me a troublemaker and wanting to shut me up since I was a child. But and again, I wasn't angry with God. I was angry with religion because I know I was seeing a lie somewhere. Like I said, this and that cannot be true. And I was trying to unravel what was going on with religion. And so when I stepped away from Christianity, I started looking at other various religions. And when I realized that Islam and Christianity was basically the same thing, and so is Judaism, those are called the Abrahamic religions. They express themselves differently, but ultimately they all stem back to some form of Yahweh, Allah, Jehovah worship. Same person. So that's because Abraham ushered the nation of Israel into, I hate to say fooled them, but truthfully, because he made a choice. That's what him and his family wanted to do. And the rest of these people have continued to follow like sheeple, blind and lost. They followed a bloodthirsty, violent, jealous, lying person who was parading around, deliberately telling people he was a god, knowing good and full well he was not. And that's what they have continued to follow for 2,000 years. And it hasn't benefited them at all. They are still stuck out there in that postage stamp of a country fighting to maintain ground for a land that they say Yahweh promised them but never gave them. And why they think they're better than everybody else in the Bible, I don't know, because Hebrews 11:40 tell you, for all of those men and women, those faithful men and women of old, for all of their acts of faith, not one of them achieved the promise. It's right there in that same book. But they have to be open-minded enough and humble enough and genuinely seeking enough to be able to accept the fact or the possibility. I don't even want to say the fact because I didn't accept it as fact at first. But when I started looking and seeking and was being led to all of this other information, I had to look at the possibility that the text, just like they said that the biblical texts were inspired of God and beneficial for teaching, reproving, and setting things straight for all manner of teaching and all that stuff they say is true about the Bible. If the text that they dug up out the ground and decided to put in the Bible after carefully culling and redacting all the good stuff out, if that part was inspired, so was the rest of the stuff they dug up next to it. There's more quote unquote biblical text that was discovered since the finding of the Dead Sea Scrolls and forward. There's more texts that have been found and left out than were included. Now they want to tell you the Bible societies and the Bible scholars will say that those texts were found to not be historically accurate or religiously accurate or whatever. But what is religious accuracy for a made-up religion that has decided that they could put anything they want into dogma, and if they hold on to that lie for 200 years, it becomes doctrine? And that's the rules of the church. I didn't make them up. That was decided at the Council of Nicaea, the same council that decided that Jesus was going to be the cornerstone, the founding point of this religion. And how ironic is that you kill a man for his beliefs and then hypocritically turn around and make a laughingstock of a religion and knit him right in the middle of it with a lie that tries to paint the picture that this was what he was all about. And the Bible, right in that same book, the Bible tells you the Jews had Jesus delivered up to the Romans. I want people to stop and think every good, beautiful, heart, lovely-hearted Christian on this planet, please consider to me who the hell you think the Romans were. That was Emperor Tiberius, I think, was the one who actually executed Yeshua. And Augustus, it was either Constantine or Augustus, I think it was Augustus, was the one who actually allowed wrote Christianity into existence 200 years after they killed him. But it was the ruling and politico-religio, whatever you want to call it, system in place that became the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican. Those are the same people. So all of that blood sacrifice and the cross with his body hanging off of it and all of that stuff that they do, it's literally like thumbing their nose not only at Yeshua, but for the one who sent him. Thank you. When Yeshua left Jerusalem, he was born around, in Bethlehem, and he was in the area in Israel, but from the age of 12, he was so spiritually advanced that the imams, the priests couldn't do nothing with him. They couldn't stand him. They didn't like Yeshua not one little bit. And I'm deliberately not calling him Jesus because that ain't his name. There was no J and none of that. The name Jesus means Hail Zeus. I refuse to call Yeshua Zeus. I just can't do it. Excuse me. But at the time when he was 12 years old, he was already telling them about themselves, and they couldn't stand it. So much so, his wealthy uncle and all, he left the area and was gone from the age of 12 to the age of 30. He was out of Israel, period. Now, the Bible, Christianity, I ain't gonna say, because the Bible doesn't say one more word. They've taken out everything that could have given us any whereabouts about him. That was another question that I wanted to ask. How is it that he's supposed to be, hands down, according to Christians, the most important person who's ever walked the face of this planet, and y'all don't know nothing that happened to him from the age of 12 to the age of 30? 18 whole years of his life are nothing but radio silence. And then at the age of 30, he comes riding back into Jerusalem on the back of a jackass. A donkey, excuse me, whatever. But the Essenes know what he was doing. He was studying in India and studying over with the Tibetan monks and the Himalayas or whatnot. He went into the ascension initiation path of the pyramids, starting down in Ethiopia, working his way up through the various temples, up through Africa into the Grand Temple in, was it Alexandria or Luxor, where the seventh initiation takes place. And the reason I know the church knows that he did those things is because all of that European artwork that we see, the Renaissance artwork and all of that supposed Byzantine artwork that show that halo, the halo is the European translation of what they know about initiation and all that happened. At the end, a high initiate will activate the light body, and it said that their body has like a faint glow to them. In the Egyptian tradition, it's what we see with the headband with the serpent sticking out of it. It's called the sabu, and that is the symbol of a high initiate. In the European artwork, you see it as the halo over the head, so they know he was a high initiate. He's a mystic, more of a monk, a Buddha. Like I said, more. I don't know if he would be considered. Buddhist monks don't have to remain celibate or single. I don't think so. More likely, a Buddhist monk or yogi or whatever you want to call them. And that was known 15, 20 years ago. The BBC did a documentary called Jesus Was a Buddhist Monk, and it's still up on YouTube if they haven't pulled it down in the last week or two. But Christians get so blind to that because preachers stand from the pulpit and tell them that everything New Age is evil. Everything that New Age ain't even new. Everything that's coming out of New, well, I ain't gonna say everything, because there is some stuff, just like any other ideology or anything else, it can get adulterated by people that either don't understand or are trying to make a buck for the wrong reasons. But the vast majority of quote unquote New Age information is going back to information that predates the Bible by at least 3, 4, 5,000 years. It's nothing new about it. It's just the truth before they got a hold to it and chopped it up into something else. That's all. You know it. But they turn around and keep people so in fear that they're so afraid of displeasing God that they can't open their minds to even consider the truth. I was so afraid of reading the Apocrypha as a child because my heart would flutter if I opened. My parents had a copy of the Apocrypha, but it was up on the top shelf of the bookshelf, and they told me I wasn't allowed to read it. And there was so much information about how it wasn't real and it wasn't inspired of God, and it was all that stuff that witnesses fed me about how evil it was, that I never bothered to read it. Well, I get it, because if people had actually read the book of Enoch, can you imagine if they were really, because the thing is, they want to call the book of Enoch evil because it's the basis for Enochian magic on this planet today. And I get it, the Rosicrucians, the Enochian thing and all of that has been adulterated over time, just like all the religions and all the philosophies. There are people that will misuse it. But the reason they don't want people looking at the book of Enoch is because in there, Enoch tells you that he was taken up in a spaceship. He wasn't raptured up into heaven by the mighty hand of God. He was taken onto a spaceship, taken back to Nibiru, taught about the planetary circuits and the cycles, and shown various things that humans have called magic since then. But he had access to various technologies that rudimentary humans would see as magic. Think about it. If you was to roll up on the pyramids, if you could go back in time 10,000 years, and rolled up in Egypt and got out of your car. Then you came down the road in your car and pulled your phone out of your pocket and flipped it open. You would and then punched out on your little Apple Watch or whatever you got. Somebody would probably think you were a god too. Right or wrong. So in the Hebrew scriptures, they talk about Enoch being caught up to God on the clouds, and he was transfigured in a flash of light, and the da-da-da-da-da would sound like a flash from a takeoff from a spaceship to me. The reason they think he was raptured up is because the time difference on Nibiru, like I said, is 3,500 of Earth years to every 1 year on Nibiru. So Enoch was taken up and taught all these things and trained and all the rest of that stuff. When he was brought back to Earth, more than one shard had already transpired. Now, he would be given rejuvenation chambers, whatever they needed to do to see to it that he didn't die in the same time frame that we was all dying. But yeah, most of the people that would have seen Enoch be caught up in the clouds were dead by the time he was brought back to Earth because of the time difference between the two planets. And that information is in the book of Enoch. So, of course, they had to tell us it was evil and you couldn't read it. But it was enough. They thought it was special enough to put it in the Bible initially. But now you decided a few hundred years later, you decided you made a mistake and now it's evil, but it was in there initially? Get out of here. No. You can't have it both ways. So now it's time for mainstream Christians to understand that. And if they don't start nowhere else, go back and read the Apocrypha. And once you do that, go back and read Sitchin's work. That's what I'm going to start on, because I know everybody ain't going to read all them books. Hell, I don't want to read them all. Sitchin did a whole lot of writing and saying, and I know it's going to be redundant probably as hell. Oh, bro, you could have said it without. But then again, it was his life's work. And if he was the one chosen, and apparently he was, because the very preface of the lost book said that Enki said to his faithful scribe Amdutsar, write. And the reason he was doing it because he knew that eventually one of the chosen would find these words. And Sitchin found them. Everybody else was focused on them other texts. Because he was familiar with Sumerian and Akkadian language, he focused on Enki's texts. And so he truthfully was the one that was chosen to do that work. So I was like, maybe, considering the information I'm trying to get out to humanity, Even though I don't want to read all 12 of the books, I think I'm going to have to. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to take y'all along for the ride with me. We're going to buckle up. What I'm going to try to do with that, though, is like read a chapter or two or three and then kind of break it down in librarian fashion to the crib notes. I'm definitely not going to just jump on the channel and try to read all of that stuff because hell to the no, I'm not doing that. I'm going to try to make it to where I can break it down with people. And if somebody wants to get it, I mean, they got the books available on Amazon. That's the crazy part. We got so much of this information that is out into space, but until people hear about it or know about it, they can't check it for themselves. Now, the ones that really bother me is the little so-called, the little know-it-alls that jump on every one of the commentaries that I've ever heard of in this instance, and they turn around and say things like, well, I need the original translation. I'm like, do you know how stupid you sound saying stuff like that? They can't believe anything that contradicts the Bible unless they can see the original translation. And not one of them people that I've ever heard say that could read Greek, Hebrew, or Aramaic, which that's the original language of the Bible. So if you'll accept the translation of the Bible as valid, why can't you accept that a translation of this other information that was dug up at the same time in the same place as the Bible text, that would be an accurate translation as well? They want to argue over points of grammar and syntax in translations of languages that they've never been able to speak or read, but they'll accept all these 11 translations of the Bible, half of which are just culling and redacting information that was taken out of it since I've been alive. They've changed the Bible 4 or 5 times since I've been alive. They started pulling Yahweh's name out of the Bible years ago. There's very few translations that have more than 4 or 5 instances of his name in the Bible at all. Because, truthfully, in the initial translations, his name wasn't in there that much. Elohim is a plural. They could refer to any of the Anunnaki. Eloha is a singular. And Yahweh's story, as he sat there and told Isaac to go take his son, was it Jacob or Isaac? He told him to go up there and cut his son's Jacob throat up on the mountain. And then he told told Enki that he could torture Job however he wanted to, that he'd be faithful. And he took all of these things that he did that can be specifically attributed to Enlil. Of course, he allowed his name to be removed from it. But when you read in the Bible about the various gods, Lord gods, Eloha and Elohim, you have to understand that Elohim is in the Bible and in the Torah and in the Quran and in whatever, only because there were multiple Anunnaki beings walking the planet that were parading around as gods, because Enlil said they are never to know that we're not gods. That was a deliberate subterfuge orchestrated and insisted upon by the one known as Yahweh. Ishtar and Enki never had a problem telling humanity who they really were. But Yahweh said, no, we're never going to tell them we're not gods, and you're going to pimp them, and you're going to do whatever I say. And then when they get mad, you're going to cap their telomeres so that they cannot live that long, because I don't want them to live long enough to get wise enough to figure this thing out. You're going to put those other cherubs and stuff at the head of the Garden of Eden so they cannot eat from the tree of life, because that was a real thing. It was a fruit that came from Nibiru that, truthfully, kept telomeres or not, had they eaten from it with that Anunnaki blood in them, they would not have died. And Enlil knew that and kept Anunnaki guards with flaming swords, sound like a lightsaber or anything to you, at the head of the gates of the Garden of Eden, which was an outdoor genetic laboratory, to make sure that Adam and Eve never got back into the garden to get an opportunity to eat from the tree of life and live. But that's the loving God they choose to worship. Anywho, child, I got to get up off this soapbox, because now I got to go to the restroom and I got to do something here in this house. Honestly, with it being the holiday day today. I'm not sure if I'm gonna actually do a reading. Like I said, my mind and heart is kind of on Yeshua today, but I can't really get into it without getting too preachy. I'm not even gonna try to upload this. If I can even upload this, I might have to convert it some other kind of way. But I probably won't do that today. But I ain't trying to piss nobody off. I know they want to have a holiday and they marry, and can't delude the people or burst their bubble on. Let them have this one more. But I'm seriously hoping. I seriously, genuinely hope that by this time next year, none of the people is actively in the collective that I'm trying to contact. I hope they will stop honoring the blood sacrifice of Yeshua. It kind of offends me, And I know they don't know any better now. That's why I'm not saying it doesn't offend me that friends and family or people or anybody that, anybody on the channel is still doing it, because I know they don't know. It offends me that the merchants and the systems work so hard to keep it going in this day and time, to keep us from finding out really the real poop on what that is. But yeah. And truthfully, they ignore the solstice. I do acknowledge the solstice, because that's kind of sort of where the December 5th, 25th date came from, the birth of the unconquered S-U-N. They turned it into the birth of the S-O-N, because it was convenient for the narrative that they wanted to paint. But after the solstice, 4 days later, there's a rising of the sun. And yeah, it's a whole lot of symbolism in the resurrection stories and stuff that they tell. But anywho, I love you, Ma. I'll holler at you later. I gotta go before my bladder explodes. And I will charge the phone and hit you up later. How about that? Sound good? You there? Mama, you there? I'll holler at you later, boo. Bye.